يا يحيى خذ الكتاب بقوة وآتيناه الحكم صبيا إذ قال الله يا عيسى إني متوفيك ورافعك إلي محمد رسول الله.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهديه الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the most high, the most just subhanahu wa ta'ala, nothing is the like of him. He subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the Quran to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam for guidance to all mankind. And in the book of Allah, all means of guidance. The Quran exposes every single type of characteristics on the face of earth. The believers, the disbelievers, the hypocrites. And these characteristics that are mentioned in the Quran, of great benefit, of course, for the believers, first and foremost, of course, for them when they read the Quran, when they listen to the Quran, they want to be among the believers and to increase their faith by imitating, by applying, by being obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the believers. And they stay away from the characteristics of the disbelievers and the hypocrites. And another benefit that we get to know from reading and reflecting upon the characteristics of the disbelievers and the hypocrites is that we warn ourselves not to put our trust in individuals that shows these types of characteristics, to treat them accordingly with the proper manner according to the way the Prophet ﷺ, but to be watchful, to be careful, so that we don't harm ourselves or harm those who depend on us and so on. So this is such an important subject in the Quran, and the entire Quran talks about the purpose of our life, and that is to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. And therefore people, according to that purpose of this life, they become of two categories, the believers and the disbelievers. And the disbelievers, the worst level and the worst type of the disbelievers are the hypocrites, those who did not even embrace the religion of Islam. They have disbelief in their hearts, but they lied and they pretended to be among the believers, so that they would destroy within, so that they would spread corruption and fitna and tribulation within the communities of the Muslims. So this is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned for the believers to warn themselves against these types of hypocrites. Surat At-Tawba, one of its names is Al-Fadiha, which means it expose the disbelievers, expose the hypocrites, those who were present at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, exposed them with all of the different characteristics that are mentioned in there, so that people warn themselves not to be among the hypocrites and to warn themselves from these hypocrites, those who shows these signs. And this is basically what we're going through in Surah At-Tawbah, and we will go through some of the verses inshallah ta'ala in the surah where we stopped. We stopped at verse number 52. We'll take inshallah ta'ala verses from 53 to 59, and it talks about the hypocrites. Some of the characteristics of the hypocrites, and this is again very valuable, very precious for us to know, because as it's mentioned before, they are the real enemies, the hypocrites. And hypocrisy is a disease, and a person can fall into this disease himself if he's not really purifying himself. If he doesn't follow the orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we can easily fall into the same disease. So to protect ourselves, to warn ourselves against dealing with individuals that shows these types of characteristics, it's something that is very important for all of us to learn. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us among those who are guided and those who receive the guidance from the book of Allah, and for us to enjoy reciting the Quran and reflecting upon the meanings of it. So inshallah ta'ala, again from verses 53 to 59 talks about the characteristics or some of the characteristics of the hypocrites, those who have disbelief in their hearts, but they just pretend to be among the believers. And it can be also true for those who are believers and are Muslims and they are following the Prophet ﷺ, but they have some of these characteristics. Some of it would take the person outside the fold of Islam, and some of it in the category of sins, but it's a sin that a person needs to repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from. So let's start inshallah ta'ala with verse number 53 from Surat At-Tawba. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قُلْ أَنفِقُوا طَوْعًا أَوْ كَرْهًا لَنْ يُتَقَبَّلَ مِنْكُمْ إِنَّكُمْ كُنْتُمْ قَوْمًا فَاسِقِينَ. Which means, say, spend willingly or unwillingly, never will it be accepted from you. Indeed, you have been a defiantly disobedient people. So the verses that starts with قُل means say, and say, O Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and to those who come after the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. So we can look at it as the people of knowledge, they say, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam what to say to these hypocrites, what to say to them, is ordering the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam to convey that to them. And here is about spending for the sake of Allah. And as we know that spending for the sake of Allah for good causes, this is part of the religion of Islam. There is mandatory spending, charity, which is a zakah, one of the pillars of Islam. And there is the optional charity, good deeds, when a person spends on his own self, on his family, on the poor, the needy, as the verse is mentioned, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, fighting for the sake of Allah and things of that nature. So the hypocrites, when they disbelieve in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, why would they spend when human beings are greedy by nature? Why would a person spend from his money unless there's something that he wants to receive, or a reward that he gets, or even a personal satisfaction? So the hypocrites, they don't help in the cause of Allah willingly, because they are disbelievers. They are worse than the disbelievers. They don't seek rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They do not believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is something that is very difficult for them, and if they do it just to show off, to gain some gain in this life, and not receiving or seeking the rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the hereafter. As we mentioned before, for any deed that a person do, matters of good deeds, a person has to believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a person has to be upon al-ikhlas, sincerity, purifying one's intention, that it's only worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, and seeking the rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the hereafter. Not seeking rewards from the actions of or the acts of obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this life, but seeking the rewards in the hereafter. Seeking the rewards is the personal action of the doer of the good deed. Does that mean that that person would not receive good deeds in this life? No, it doesn't mean this. When a person is obedient to Allah, he seeks the rewards. This is what your action, you're seeking the rewards only in the hereafter. But as a blessings of the good deeds, a person would receive goodness in this life and in the hereafter. So this is a very important point to mention. So the hypocrites, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying to them, saying to the Prophet ﷺ to convey that to them, قُلْ أَنفِقُوا طَوْعًا أَوْ كَرْهًا. Spend willingly or unwillingly. Some of them might spend willingly for the reason of showing off, or maybe it feels good for them. Sometimes a person in state of disbelief, he might spend his money for a good cause. For what reason? It gives a personal satisfaction. Human beings, they have sometimes, the mercy in their hearts would make them spend to help the needy and the poor and things of that nature. So, but a person is not seeking the rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the hereafter, it would not be accepted from him. So the condition for the deeds to be accepted, it has to be sincerely done for the sake of Allah. It has to be according to the way of the Prophet ﷺ, not evil actions. So whether they spend willingly or karha, or unwillingly, when they dislike to do it because they have been encouraged to do it, or they have been ordered to do it, or the zakah time comes and they have to spend, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لَن يُتَقَبَّلَ مِنكُمْ. It would not be accepted from you. Why is that? It would not be accepted from you. إِنَّكُمْ كُنْتُمْ قَوْمًا فَاسِقِينَ. Indeed, you are defiantly disobedient people. And what is meant by fasiqeen here in this verse, not just sinful people, because sinful people, the deeds also can be accepted from them. The sinful people, those who commit major sins as Muslims, their good deeds, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts their good deeds if it's done sincerely for the sake of Allah, according to the deen of Islam, according to the way of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But what is meant here in this context with fasiqeen, as the ulama they mention in the tafsir of the verse, it refers to the disbelievers. So these are the hypocrites, those who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not accept their deeds because in reality they are disbelievers. They're not Muslims to start with because they have disbelief in their hearts. They are not among the believers. So that's why their deeds are not accepted. And the next verse will explain more in general terms what a person should avoid so that their good deeds are not accepted. The subject of al-qabul, لَن يُتَقَبَّلَ مِنْكُمْ, it would not be accepted from you. Al-qabul is acceptance. The believers are ordered to do good deeds, to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, to believe in Allah and the last messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and to have the matters of belief, and to establish the salah, and to give the zakat, to fast the month of Ramadan, and so on, to stay away from sins. So there are many rulings here. And the believers, when they do the good deeds, they're concerned. Why? Because they want to make sure that their deeds are accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Does that mean that a person would do a good deed and the deed is not accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Yes, it's valid to happen. It's valid to happen. How is that? If a person is not doing the deed sincerely for the sake of Allah, if the person is making the salah just to show off, just to get a reward, just because he doesn't want to be looked at as someone that does not worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's not sincerely for the sake of Allah. Or a person giving charity for fame, for that person to be seen as a generous person, that deed is not accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala unless it's sincerely, purely for the sake of Allah. As the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, أَنَا أَغْنَى الشُّرَكَاءَ عَنِ الشِّرْكِ, that I am the most rich from all of the partners when it comes to shirk or associating partners with me. مَنْ عَمِلَ عَمَلًا أَشْرَكَ فِيهِ مَعِيَ غَيْرِ تَرَكْتُ وَشِرْكَ. That means whoever do any deed and he make partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in his actions, seeking the rewards from other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, I would leave him and his shirk. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most rich. He would not accept the deed unless it's sincerely for the sake of Allah. So if someone spend billions and billions to help the poor and the needy and really change the lives of many, an extremely generous and a very kind person, that person's deed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would not accept it if he's a disbeliever, or if he's doing it not for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, seeking rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. The answer is yes. And the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, an example like this was presented to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam with regards to Hatim al-Ta'i, someone that was well known among the people of Jahiliyyah, of ignorant times, that he was extremely generous, and people would even give parables about him of how generous he was. And the Prophet ﷺ said that this person was a disbeliever, died in the state of disbelief, and the message had reached him. So he's among the people of the hellfire. Knowing that from the unseen, the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned the reason why he is someone that the deeds are not accepted from him. He said, ﷺ, إِنَّهُ لَمْ يَقُلْ يَوْمًا مِنَ الدَّهْرِ رَبِّ اغْفِرْ لِي ذَنْبِي. He never said a day in his life, Oh Allah, forgive my sins. That means he never worshipped Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's not someone that is a believer. For the rewards to come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he has to believe in Allah. He has to worship none but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. A person did all kinds of good deeds with generosity. Whatever he was seeking, he will get whatever he seeks. If he seeks personal satisfaction, he will get that. If he seeks blessings in his life, he will get that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most just. If he doesn't seek the reward in the hereafter, he disbelieves in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, disbelieves in the last day, why would someone expect that he would get a reward in the hereafter? He did not seek that to start with. So this is a principle in matters of the deen, that whoever dies in the state of disbelief, their deeds are not accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And a believer, for every deed that we do, it has to be sincerely for the sake of Allah. That's why the importance of the niyyah and the intention, such a great importance that we have to give to the intentions for every action we do, so that we're not just limited to this life. Otherwise we ruin our actions. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned here about the hypocrites, لَن يُتَقَبَّلَ مِنْكُمْ. It would not be accepted from you, إِنَّكُمْ كُنْتُمْ قَوْمًا فَاسِقِينَ, because you are disbelievers. You disbelieve in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you disbelieve in the hereafter, you disbelieve in the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And then after that, in the next verse, it will talk about why also the deeds are not accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They were fasiqeen, rebellious, defiantly disobedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, disbelievers, and more in the next verse. But we'll do that inshallah ta'ala after the break, so stay with us inshallah.
محمد رسول الله
through the powerfully vivid, spiritually uplifting, heart-softening, life-changing, soul-transforming descriptions of life after death. We reminded ourselves about the barrier that is placed. So once you leave this world, a barrier is placed behind you, and you are prevented from coming back to this life. Those 2 rak'ahs that you used to pray, you used to take for granted. After you leave this world, there's a barrier. The journey of the soul through the stages of the day of resurrection and the explicit descriptions of hellfire, as well as the beautiful and spiritually uplifting descriptions of paradise. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, we did not create the heavens and the earth without purpose, without aim, without a reason. This is the assumption of those who disbelieve, so beware and woe to those who disbelieve from the hellfire. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us immediately the example of the righteous people on the Day of Judgment. So He says, أَلَا إِنَّ أَوْلِيَاءَ اللَّهِ لَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, no doubt, verily, the awliya of Allah, the friends of Allah, those who are close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there is no fear on them.
Look at the barakah and the blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put into this farm. Where the cloud comes and rains just for him, subhanAllah. And my brother goes and works, and he provides for me, and I just sit back and I worship. So they have it divided, where one works and the other one worships. Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu, he said, Akhu khayrun mink, that your brother is better than you. He was a man who devoted his life solely for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, worshipping Allah day and night. And here he's accused, he's falsely accused of fornicating. ثلاثة يحبهم الله. 3 people that Allah loves. And as a Muslim, as soon as you hear this, you're like, oh, who are these 3? I wonder who they are. How can I be from them? Who are they? Now, these are things that you'll find it, the people who are attached to the dunya sometimes, it's not a manly thing. It's more of a feminine type thing. It's a soft thing. That Allah says, whoever strives for us, that verily we should guide them to our ways, and indeed Allah will be with the doers of good. So if you're from the doers of good, ones who are striving, Allah is going to be with you, He's going to assist you, He's going to help you, inshallah. He would come every night and he would give this milk to his parents first and then give the milk to the rest of the family. One night he was late, he came home late. So what does he do? He holds that milk and won't let anybody drink it. Not his children, not his wife, until his parents wake up in the morning and they drink it first.
Alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam wa rasulullah. Welcome back, and we are with verses 53 to 59 from Surat At-Tawba, talking about the hypocrites and why their deeds are not accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Such an important topic, something that each and every one of us, we are in need of it, to make sure that our deeds are not wasted, that we have to be sincere, we have to do things only for the sake of Allah, following the way of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. Verse number 54 talks about why the deeds are not accepted from the hypocrites. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا مَنَعَهُمْ أَن تُقْبَلَ مِنْهُمْ نَفَقَاتُهُمْ إِلَّا أَنَّهُمْ كَفَرُوا بِاللَّهِ وَبِرَسُولِهِ وَلَا يَأْتُونَ الصَّلَاةَ إِلَّا وَهُمْ كُسَالَى وَلَا يُنْفِقُونَ إِلَّا وَهُمْ كَارِهُونَ. Which means, and what prevents their expenditures from being accepted from them, but that they have disbelieved in Allah and in His Messenger, and that they come not to prayer except while they are lazy, and that they do not spend except while they are unwilling. And this is some of the characteristics of the hypocrites. وَمَا مَنَعَهُمْ أَن تُقْبَلَ مِنْهُمْ نَفَقَاتُهُمْ. What prevented them from their nafaqah, from their charity, that it's not to be accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, إِلَّا أَنَّهُمْ كَفَرُوا بِاللَّهِ. It's because they disbelieved in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. This is the reason. So why their deeds are not accepted? Because they are disbelievers. But they pretend, they do physical actions to be with the believers. They even come to the prayers and they pray with the believers, and they even would say La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what's in their hearts. And that's when we said that the hypocrites are the most dangerous part of any society, because we as Muslims, as a principle in our deen, that it is not permissible for anyone to accuse someone of being a hypocrite. When a person, his outside appearance, he speaks as if he's a Muslim, he acts like he's a Muslim, it is not permissible for anyone to think bad about him or to accuse him that he's a hypocrite or he's a disbeliever, because it's in the hearts. And these people are liars. They are pretending to be among the Muslims. They're there to plot and to spread evil and corruption. So if they show signs, yes, the people of authority should be warned against them, not to give them the most trustworthy positions in authority and the like of that. A person should warn himself not to have them as companions and friends and so on. But as far as accusing them or labeling them that they are disbelievers and so on, it's not permissible. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ at his time, he would only mention the names of the hypocrites by the revelation from Allah to, for example, Hudayfa radiallahu anh. He would keep that secrets, and the names of the hypocrites. And the companions radiallahu anhum, they didn't know that. And we know the famous incident when Umar radiallahu anhu would keep on asking Hudayfa, did the Prophet ﷺ name me with those who are hypocrites? And he meant radiallahu anhu, Umar radiallahu anhu was one of the great believers, the second best of this ummah after Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. But he referred to the practical hypocrisy, because hypocrisy are of two types. The major one, they are disbelievers in their hearts, they are disbelievers. But then the other category, the minor hypocrisy, when people would fall into some of these characteristics that might be resembling some of the hypocrites, or even to the extent of which we know that the Quran talks about perfect actions. For example, يُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةِ, the believers, they establish the salah. What is the meaning of إِقَامَةُ الصَّلَاةِ, to establish the salah? It means that we pray with its pillars, with its conditions, with its obligations, recommended acts, with khushu' and devotion in the salah. But we know that we are weak, and many times in the salah we drift away. We are not focused, we're not devoted in the salah. So Umar radiallahu anhu, he thought of the like of these actions as being like a hypocrite, because the deed is, you are ordered to perfect your salah, but the deeds are not as perfect as what we say and as what we are ordered to be. So when he would ask Hudayfa radiallahu anhu this, Hudayfa radiallahu anhu, this is a secret that the Prophet ﷺ kept with him. He said, no, you're not one of them, and I won't name anyone after you. That means he doesn't want to open that door for people to come and ask him, did the Prophet ﷺ name me among the hypocrites and so on. So that's why it's a very important thing that we take these characteristics to protect ourselves, first and foremost, and if someone is like this, to advise them to make sure that we are warned against these types of behaviors. So, but first of all, the deeds are not accepted because they disbelieve in Allah and the Messenger ﷺ. So the disbelievers, their deeds are not accepted by Allah. They can get some rewards in this life, as we said. They get more wealth, they get more health, good things in their families and so on. But nothing for them in the hereafter. It won't be accepted. That means it would not be given to them as a reward in the hereafter. And more of the characteristics of the hypocrites, وَلَا يَأْتُونَ الصَّلَاةَ إِلَّا وَهُمْ كُسَالَى. They never come to the salah unless they are lazy. That means they go to the salah. But every time they go to the salah, they're not going to pray willingly. They're not going to pray to seek rewards from Allah. They're not going to pray, to wash away their sins. And this is because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered them to establish the salah. The believers, they pray because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered them. They pray seeking rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. Prayer, establishing the salah, the 5 daily prayers, this is one of the pillars of Islam. Something that a Muslim, he has to make the 5 daily prayers. But for the hypocrites, so that the people do not label them as disbelievers or hypocrites, they would have to go and show themselves and to others that they are praying. So, but they're not really going there to seek the rewards from Allah. They disbelieve in Allah and in the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Imagine someone that is a spy, comes from the disbelievers, and he lives among the believers, among the Muslims, for example. So he has to pray with them, so that he pretend to be among them. So this is basically how the hypocrites are. So therefore, they do not come to the salah unless they are lazy. So that's why the heaviest two prayers for them to go to the masjid is Salatul Isha and Salatul Fajr, as the Prophet ﷺ, أثقل الصلاة على المنافقين, the heaviest two salah upon the hypocrites, Salatul Fajr or Salatul Isha, the Fajr salah and the Salat Al-Isha. And if they know what's in it for the rewards, they would come to it even وَلَوْ حَبْوَ, even if they have to crawl on their faces. If people know the rewards that they get from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if they come to Salatul Isha and Salatul Fajr in Jama'ah, they would come to it even if they have to crawl. And that's why the believers, they always have the zeal to come to the masjid. They're attached to the masjid. They make their salah for the sake of Allah. But for the hypocrites, if they go with laziness. وَلَا يَأْتُونَ الصَّلَاةَ إِلَّا هُمْ كُسَالَى. As a benefit of that, they mention, even though this talks about the hypocrites, but also the believers, they should make sure that they do not imitate the hypocrites in any of their evil characteristics. So even if you're going to the salah and you're tired, you're going to Salatul Fajr and you did not sleep much throughout the night, and you're going and you're tired, you're going to Salatul Fajr, you're not going to show off, you're going seeking the rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, right? But make sure that you don't look lazy, so that you don't resemble or imitate the ways of the hypocrites. That a person should act or should look like he's not lazy. Unless a person, of course, is sick, it's a different situation, and he's excused, he can pray at home, of course. So, وَلَا يَأْتُونَ الصَّلَاةَ إِلَّا وَهُمْ كُسَالَى. So, to protect ourselves from even looking lazy and sleepy and standing in the salah, in a lazy way and so on. And another one, وَلَا يُنْفِقُونَ إِلَّا وَهُمْ كَارِهُونَ. And they don't spend unless they hate it so much, unless they dislike it. So why would they spend if they dislike it? Because they're hypocrites. They don't want to be looked at as someone that is greedy or someone that is not paying the zakah. Zakah is mandatory, and the Prophet ﷺ would send the people of the zakah to collect the zakah, and they have to pay. So they would pay it, but not willingly. And this is something that the believers, they give the zakah, the obligatory charity, of course, they give it with them being pleased. And that's what faith and iman does to the person. We love wealth as human beings. We love to have wealth and money and so on. But we know that the portion in our wealth that is zakah to be given out to the poor, that's not our money. This is according to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the bestower of all sustenance, the one that provided this money for us, He's the one that decreed the matter that this amount of money, which is a very small amount of money in one's wealth, and it's not upon everybody, it's not depending on the earnings, but rather on the saving part of one's wealth. That's not our money, that's the rights of the poor. So the person with decency, he would not take the money of others. So this portion of the money, a person, when a believer gives it, he gives it willingly, he gives it with even being pleased that a person is able to fulfill the orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And for the hypocrites, of course, they don't spend it, they don't give it unless they have to be doing that or unwillingly. وَهُمْ كَارِهُونَ, they hate it so much, they dislike it. Let along, of course, the optional acts of charity. If they do this to show off, they do it just for the, to gain reputation or praise from the people in this life. So this is another characteristic. So that's why we have to basically step over our own desire in these matters. And whenever we're doing a good deed, right, there's this level of being pleased that this is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to purify ourselves. If the unseen is made for us to see, nobody will sit back and everybody will give for the sake of Allah, and everybody will establish the salah perfectly and to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, hope for the rewards of Allah and the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So as a result of what is mentioned, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the next verse, فَلَا تُعْجِبْكَ أَمْوَالُهُمْ وَلَا أَوْلَادُهُمْ إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيُعَذِّبَهُمْ بِهَا فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَتَزْهَقَ أَنفُسُهُمْ وَهُمْ كَافِرُونَ. Which means, so let not their wealth or their children impress you. Allah only intends to punish them through them in worldly life, and that their souls should depart at death while they are disbelievers. So, فَلَا تُعْجِبْكَ أَمْوَالُهُمْ وَلَا أَوْلَادُهُم. This order is to who? To the Prophet ﷺ and to the believers. So, for each and every Muslim, فَلَا تُعْجِبَكَ أَمْوَالُهُمْ وَلَا أَوْلَادُهُم. Do not be impressed with their wealth, nor their children and their offspring. So that means if those who show these types of characteristics, and of course the disbelievers to start with, this is definitely very clear also in this regard, do not be impressed with someone's wealth, with someone's children, if they're upon disbelief. Do not be impressed with someone's wealth and someone's offsprings and goodness and so on, if they are among the hypocrites or having these signs of hypocrisy, because it's not going to be of any benefit for them. And that's a great lesson for all of us. Many of the Muslims today, they're so impressed by people that spread corruption on the face of earth just because they're very wealthy. And they take them as examples for them, or they want to imitate them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَلَا تُعْجِبَكَ أَمْوَالُهُمْ وَلَا أَوْلَادُهُم. Do not be pleased, do not be impressed, do not like their wealth and their offsprings and so on. So this is an order, clear one, that you have to purify your heart from this. How can you purify your heart from this when we are, as human beings, we like to have wealth and children and so on? It's the religious aspect of things, is knowing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not pleased with them as long as they are in the state of disbelief. Therefore, how a believer has the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would be impressed by them. Someone that is taken the path running diligently to fall and to throw himself into the hellfire, but while running, is driving the most expensive car to throw himself into a fire. Would you be impressed that he's driving a nice car? I mean, you see the end and the destination that he's going to. Right? This is exactly how things are in this life. When a person is ruining himself, taking himself to the hellfire, turning away from the truth, arrogantly turning away from the truth, and having all kinds of wealth and health and the like of this. فَلَا تُعْجِبَكَ أَمْوَالُهُمْ وَلَا أَوْلَادُهُم. Do not let their wealth nor their offsprings impress you, or you would like it. And why is that? إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيُعَذِّبَهُم بِهَا فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only intends to punish them through them in this life, and their soul will depart, meaning at the moment of death, while they are disbelievers. Two of the worst things that can happen to them. So this is again apparent things and the reality of things. The apparent things is that these people, they have wealth, they have power, and they have offsprings, they have all the adornment of this life. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, do not be impressed by this. Why? Because all of these materialistic things that they have and possessions in this life, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that gave it to them. For what reason? To punish them with it. So wealth for them is a punishment. Wealth for the hypocrites is a punishment. Wealth for the disbelievers, punishment. The offsprings and the goodness of this life is a punishment for them. This is the statements of the Quran. In this life they will be punished with these types of things. The miseries and the regret and the smallest loss that makes them miserable in this life, and in the moment of death also they would leave all of this behind. And the worst thing ever is when they die as disbelievers, the everlasting misery and punishment and the hellfire for them. So they were not upon anything, they were not upon any goodness whatsoever. It's all wasted because of their disbelief, because of their hypocrisy. Something that is, fill the hearts with the love of Allah, with being focused on what's benefiting for us, fills the heart with the truth that the believers are not deceived by the materialistic things in this life. And if we read the Quran, we will be protected from being deceived and following the ways of those who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't approve their actions. We'll continue inshallah ta'ala with more of the verses after the break, so stay with us inshallah.
محمد رسول الله.
The mission of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is La ilaha illallah, is to carry the meaning of the word La ilaha illallah to everyone, to all the people who are around him, as many people as he can. So this is the mission. Mission is needed by everybody. Tell me about a person in this world who does not need mercy. Mercy is a key way or a key word for healing the hearts of human beings.
What happens is they get so many rejections, but they feel so bad about themselves. They don't know that what's been rejected now is your current skills. your current experience, which by time and effort can develop.
You are looking for another job, but temporarily you are doing this job, so perfect it. And this is part of our great religion, is perfection. And perhaps there is another chapter about this. Perfect your work. Give the right to the job that you have.
Because, for example, on another note, if you are not positive, you cannot motivate.
Absolutely.
If you are not positive, you cannot recognize, you cannot even look for the good things.
محمد رسول الله.
Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. We'll come back and with the verses in Surat At-Tawba 53 to 59 that talks about some of the characteristics of the hypocrites. And we just finished the verse number 55, and it's something that really we should keep on repeating these meanings to purify our hearts and to protect ourselves from falling into these evil characteristics and to see things in the right way, not to be deceived. And that's why the believers are wise. The believers are never deceived in this life. Why? Because they have the right perception, because they see things in its real way and form. They don't get deceived by many of the people on the face of earth. They're deceived by money, they're deceived by fame, by all kinds of glamour in this life. But when we see it in the real way and form, it's punishment in itself, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said. If it's based on sins and disobedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if a person is a disbeliever, if a person is a hypocrite, what the benefit of all of this wealth and health and offsprings and so on? It's nothing but a punishment for the person unless he repents to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then after that, in verse number 56, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَيَحْلِفُونَ بِاللَّهِ إِنَّهُمْ لَمِنْكُمْ وَمَا هُمْ مِنْكُمْ وَلَكِنَّهُمْ قَوْمٌ يَفْرَقُونَ, which means, and they swear by Allah that they are from among you, while they are not from among you, but they are a people who are afraid. And it will be continued. وَيَحْلِفُونَ بِاللَّهِ, they swear by Allah. One of the characteristics of the hypocrites, they swear by Allah a lot. They frequently swear before even was asked to swear. You know, a person, if he's asked to swear in the court of law, in front of the judge, you know, this is a valid context to swear. You know, a person has to swear by Allah that he would speak the truth and nothing but the truth. This is something that is valid to be done. But if a person is truthful, he doesn't need to swear, unless, again, in a situation where he has to do so. Otherwise, you know, a person just say the truth, and people, if they believe him, they believe him. If they don't, you know, the people of the truth, they're very content because they know that this is the truth. Unless they are asked, or unless in a situation where they need to swear by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make sure that the matter is clear. But for the hypocrites, because they're liars, and that's one of the characteristics of those who lie a lot, is that they swear frequently. Everything they are doing, they would say, Wallahi, I did this, Wallahi, I didn't do this. Why? Because they know that people are looking at them or not believing them, something within themselves to exposing themselves because of their frequent lying and so on. So the hypocrites, يَحْلِفُونَ بِاللَّهِ, it's something very easy for them to swear by Allah. And if a person, you know, he hears a Muslim swearing by Allah, usually that we would believe such a person. So وَيَحْلِفُونَ بِاللَّهِ إِنَّهُمْ لَمِنْكُمْ, they swear by Allah that they are among you, they are one of you. As we said, they are disbelievers, but they're physically with the believers to destroy within, for whatever reasons there is. Working with the disbelievers, the enemies of the believers, to destroy within. They're gaining their own fame and power and wealth by just living among the believers because the believers are superior at certain times. So they swear by Allah that they are among you. وَمَا هُمْ مِنْكُمْ, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says they are not among you, they're not one of you, they're not part of you. Because if they are part of you, they would believe in Allah and the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They would be obedient to Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They won't spread fitna and corruption. They will do the actions that you do as the believers. And that's why the believers are all one. They help one another in matters of righteousness and goodness. And they don't help one another in matters of transgression and sins. So, وَلَكِنَّهُمْ قَوْمٌ يَفْرَقُونَ, but in reality, why they're doing this, why they're swearing to the believers that they are among them, and when they are not, because there are people that are afraid, they are cowards. They're worried about their own being in this life. So they're afraid to show their identity. So because they're afraid. And then the next verse even explains the matter clearer. The next verse, لو يجدون ملجأ أو مغارات أو مدخلا لولوا إليه وهم يجمحون. Which means if they could find a refuge or some caves or any place to enter and hide, they would turn to it while they run heedlessly. So they are living among you, meaning the believers, when they hate it so much. And they can't wait till they run away from them. But for one reason or the other, they are staying with you. So that's why the verse says, لو يجدون ملجأ, if they find a refuge to run to. Or أو مغارات, a cave in a mountain. أو مدخلا, something under the ground. You know, any tunnel, anything that would make them run away to it. لولوا إليه, they would turn away to it immediately. وهم يجمحون, that means while they're going fast, heedlessly. They don't care what directions they're going as long as they leave the believers and go somewhere else. And this is another sign of hypocrisy that we have to be careful. That even though a person might not be a pure hypocrite like these hypocrites, but it's a disease in the heart that a believer doesn't want to be among the believers. He wants to run away from them. He likes to live with the disbelievers. He likes to be with them and to enjoy their companionship. When disbelievers, that means they do not worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They do not establish the prayers in the masajid. They do not do the deeds that are ordered to do. They do not observe what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from the believers. So this is just a benefit that we need to learn from this. That the hypocrites, they run away from the believers. The believers, they want to be with the believers. Opposite to that meaning. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exposed their affairs. And they did this because of, why they staying then with the believers? Because they're afraid of something. Or they want to gain something from them. Or they have different agendas and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. And then after that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks more about them by saying with regards to charity, and when the Prophet ﷺ would encourage them to give for the sake of Allah, to help the needy and the poor and so on, the hypocrites would not like that. And that's what the next verse says, وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ يَلْمِزُكَ فِي الصَّدَقَاتِ فَإِنْ أُعْطُوا مِنْهَا رَضُوا وَإِنْ لَمْ يُعْطَوْا مِنْهَا إِذَا هُمْ يَسْخَطُونَ. Which means, and among them are some who criticize you concerning the distribution of charities. If they are given from them, they approve. But if they are not given from them, at once they become angry. So, وَمِنْهُمْ, again, وَمِنْهُمْ is repeated, and among them, among the hypocrites, those who يَلْمِزُكَ فِي الصَّدَقَاتِ. Al-lamz is to criticize, is to make faces, is to look displeased with something. So when the Prophet ﷺ would receive the money and distribute the charity to the poor and to the needy and so on, the hypocrites would criticize the distribution of the Prophet ﷺ. As it's mentioned in some of the hadith where the Prophet ﷺ was distributing the charity, and a man comes to the Prophet ﷺ and he says that this is not intended to be just. And the Prophet ﷺ would say to him, who would be just if I'm not just? You know, how can they accuse the Prophet ﷺ of something like this when the Prophet ﷺ is the perfect human being ever? And he's the most just among the human beings. And for them to say that, it shows exposed what's in the hearts of their disbelief. So they would criticize the Prophet ﷺ, they would say all kinds of things. And this is where the Prophet ﷺ also, when the man came to the Prophet ﷺ and he said this, and the Prophet ﷺ said in the meaning of which, from the progeny of this person, these evil people that would leave the deen of Islam, and they would attack the believers and they would call them believers even though they are among the believers. And these are the Khawarij that the Prophet ﷺ predicted that they will be among this ummah, fighting and killing the Muslims. And they would claim that the Muslims are kuffar and so on. The Khawarij that comes in every generation, there's always a group of them. Those who would renegade and they would fight against the believers and spread evil and corruption and fitan and so on. So how that initiated? From someone that, you know, said that to the Prophet ﷺ. They criticized the Prophet ﷺ in distributing the charity. فَإِنْ أُعْطُوا مِنْهَا رَضُوا. If they're given the charity, they're pleased. They say, MashaAllah, this is such a just distribution of the charity. وَإِن لَمْ يُعْطَوْا. And if they're not given minha from it, إِذَا هُمْ يَسْخَطُونَ. They will be angry. And this is the sign of hypocrisy, one of the characteristics of the hypocrisy, with regards to worldly affairs and worldly gain in general. You know, a person is pleased with Allah if he's given wealth and health. If that is taken away from him, he's not pleased with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we are ordered to be pleased with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at all times, at all levels, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that decrees all things. And we do not know the reality of things. We don't know what's best for us. And if we believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with His names and attributes, we will be constantly pleased with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he gives according to the revelation from Allah. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam does not distribute the charity for his own self, for his own sake, but according to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals to him. And some people might be given, some people might not be given, for whatever reason. But for the hypocrites, they're pleased only if they're given, and if they're not given, they will be angry. And the Prophet ﷺ mentioned that this is one of the characteristics of the slaves of the wealth and the slave of the materialistic things. What is the sign of such a person? In أُعْطِيَ رَضِيَ وَإِلَّمْ يُعْطَ سَخِطْ. If he's given, he's pleased. And if he's not given, he's angry. Materialistic things of this life. And then the next verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, even in it is a da'wah and calling the hypocrites to repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from these evil characteristics and showing the evil actions that these hypocrites are upon. The next verse, verse number 59, وَلَوْ أَنَّهُمْ رَضُوا مَا آتَاهُمُ اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ وَقَالُوا حَسْبُنَا اللَّهُ سَيُؤْتِينَ اللَّهُ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ وَرَسُولُهُ إِنَّا إِلَى اللَّهِ رَاغِبُونَ. Which means, if only they had been satisfied with what Allah and His Messenger gave them and said, sufficient for us is Allah, Allah will give us of His bounty, and so will His Messenger. Indeed, we are desirous towards Allah, it would have been better for them. وَلَوْ أَنَّهُمْ رَضُوا. If they had been radu, satisfied, pleased with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them, what Allah decreed for them, and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam distributed for them. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that I'm nothing but a distributor, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that bestows. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would not give them from his own decision. This is all revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if they were pleased with that, and they would say, Hasbunallah, Allah suffice for us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that suffices for us. He's the only one that we seek rewards from. He's the only sustainer. We do not need anyone but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Of course, this is not something that the hypocrites are upon. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, if they would have just did this and said this, and this is what is best for them, to be among the believers and to have these types of belief and these types of statements to say, سَيُؤْتِينَ اللَّهُ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ وَرَسُولُهُ, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give us from His bounty and His Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And if they would have also said, إِنَّا إِلَى اللَّهِ رَاغِبُونَ, indeed we are raghibun, desirous towards Allah, that we desire that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestows His favor upon us. And the part here says, إِنَّا إِلَى اللَّهِ, we are to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raghibun, in that state of desire. We desire nothing but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the pleasure of Allah, to seek the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the day of judgment, to be with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know, at the moment of death, when the believers, they return to the mercy of Allah, nothing is more beautiful to them than this, and that's why they would never want to come back to this world anymore. Why? Because they return to the mercy of Allah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying for these hypocrites, if they would have just done this and said this, it would have been better for them. That the raghba and the desire is only from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Only from what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestow for them. They don't desire anything from the human beings. Their desires, their need is all from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and therefore they turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the bestower of all goods, and He subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that the believers are pleased with. And that shows also the life of the believers are like this. The believers, they desire none but what's with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because He's the bestower of all things. The hearts of the believers attached only to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They don't really witness with their hearts the human beings as bestowers or givers. They don't really get angry or pleased with the human beings because they gave them or they didn't give them. You know, the believers are in a totally different realm, if it's correct to say. They are seeking the rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. They know that the human beings are nothing but tools, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the bestower of things. He is the sustainer subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when the Prophet ﷺ would distribute things to them, it's all by the orders of Allah. So the believers are always pleased with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestow upon them. This is such a beautiful ending of the verse. Inna ilallahi raghibun. This should be our way of life, that we only seek the pleasure of Allah. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestowed something upon us, we're pleased with the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at all levels. We take the means, we seek rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. Otherwise, a person should be careful with these seeds of hypocrisy in the heart, when a person is only pleased when he's given. And when he is deprived of something, he will be angry and even not pleased with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why the believers also, they see that when Allah bestows something upon them, this is a good thing. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala withholds something from them, it means to the believers that Allah bestowed something to them. Bestowed the fact that He deprived them of something. That means for them to be patient, for them to be pleased with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bestow His bounties upon them and to make them pleased with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the same way they were pleased with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this life. There are many things to be mentioned, and maybe we covered many of these verses. We ought to give it more attention and more time to warn ourselves from these evil characteristics of the hypocrites, but we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make it benefiting and to make us among those who listen to the orders of Allah and to apply it in ourselves and to enjoy good and to forbid evil. Until next time, I leave you with the protection of Allah. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
إلا الذين تابوا وأصلحوا وبينوا فأولئك أتوب عليهم وأنا التواب الرحيم. فادعوا الله مخلصين له الدين ولو كره الكافرون. يا زكريا إنا نبشرك بغلام